All right. So today we have Kat Kennedy here, and she's rejoining the program. She was on episode 57. We talked about a lot of different things, space, NASA, how she got interested in science, a little bit of dinosaurs. I have here my dinosaur mug.
I have that mug.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
I thought it was some like unique mug, and then I go to like museum gift shops and they're all over the place.
They are, but they're really cool. Don't put it in the dishwasher because I made that mistake.
What happened to it?
Like the decal melts off.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Which is ironic because if you put hot beverages in here, it fades. You see, right now you have, the full dinosaur, but then it goes down to just the skeleton.
Yes, which is pretty cool. I like that.
There are so many cool dinosaur toys and items. It's.
I wish I had seen them when like I was smaller, but I still enjoy them now. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Did you have dinosaur toys growing up?
Not really. No.
Okay.
It was more Star Wars figures.
Okay.
Than anything. Yeah. Did you?
Nice. I did. Yeah. My favorite, I had all these little things. None of the like really, if you see some of those like dinosaurs, the toys, they're like really detailed and they're like 30, 40, 50 bucks a thing.
Yeah.
Mine were these plastic ones. My dad had this, he got me this Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Okay.
You know how like in the 20th century, how it was like standing up and it was like really awkward looking and things like that? Well, he found one of those, like a puppet, one of those on the side of the road because he was working for the highway department.
Okay.
And then that was like the T-Rex that I played with.
Wow, that's a cool story.
Yeah. So we're recording this. Game 5 of the Milwaukee Bucks is later tonight. I'm wearing my Bucks hat right now.
Very nice.
Are you into sports?
I'm a huge baseball fan. Baseball? Yes. My dad is from outside of Boston, and I would say when I was in second grade, I just sat down and started watching the Red Sox, and I've been a diehard ever since. So they're playing the Yankees this weekend. So it's been a good series.
So is that really big in your kind of world, like playing the Yankees? Is that a big deal?
It used to be like the rivalry is like at an all-time peak with the Yankees, but for me, the bigger rivalry are the Astros, the Houston Astros. I don't know why. I can stand the Yankees now. I can't stand the Astros. I hate the Astros so much.
Wow. I'm actually planning to go to a White Sox game tomorrow against the Astros.
Cool.
So we'll see. We'll see. At least we're planning on it. We'll see what happens. But what's your best sports memory?
Ooh,
favorite.
Honestly, it's not really a memory because I remember parts of it, but I was so young. It was after the Red Sox broke the curse in 2004. Yeah. I saw them in 2005 at the Rangers Stadium in Arlington, and I was a huge Johnny Damon fan. For Red Sox fans, he was the one that looked like Jesus.
He was gorgeous. Yeah.
He was so gorgeous. and my dad, I was probably 9, I think 8 or 9. And my dad was like, if we go down to the dugout, like, you're adorable. They can't say no for a picture. Right. And I didn't really get that. I get it now. I'm like, okay. But I went down right before the game started. It's like 100-degree heat. I'm sweating through my cap and I'm just waiting there because he was going to be first due up. And what I didn't know, my dad told me that the umpire gives you some time to warm up, but if you aren't at home plate to start the game within, I don't know, like 30, 45 seconds, it forfeits the game. For some reason, really? I didn't know that. Yeah, I didn't know that. Maybe it's my dad telling tall tales. I'm not sure. But Johnny Damon came out and I kind of blacked out because he was like my icon. And took a picture with him. It's blown up in my parents' living room. And the umpire was like counting down, like, you better get to home plate. And Johnny Damon was like, give me a moment, and took a picture with me.
Wow.
And I'll always remember that. So
Wow. That's cool.
yeah.
Yeah. So I'm adding to my memories this week because the Bucks are in the NBA finals. It's tied up 2-2. So we need
Okay.
2 more. And probably by the time this episode is up, they'll either have won the finals or lost.
Who are they
So
playing?
we'll find out.
I don't know anything about
It
basketball.
is the Phoenix Suns.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Basketball is like goes way over my head.
yeah. Everybody's got their
cool.
sport. Yeah, it's good.
Good
So I'm
for you.
excited. The last time we talked was like October 2020.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest developments in space exploration, technology, NASA within that time?
Okay. Well, the last time we talked, SpaceX had just completed their DM2 mission, which was the first crewed SpaceX vehicle that went to the station. I'm sorry, the dog. I'm sorry if you heard that. First crewed vehicle to the International Space Station. It was 2 guys, Bob and Doug, and they came back.
Bob and Doug, yeah.
Bob and Doug, yeah. Doug actually retired yesterday.
Oh, wow.
But, they came back in August, and then in November it was a full crew. So instead of 2 people, it was 4 people. They flew, and that was SpaceX Crew 1. And then in April was Crew 2. And so they've been just, and it was the same vehicle. It was the same, they like reused it. So I would say that one's a big one where.
Is that a really big deal to reuse a vehicle?
For sure. So we did it back in like the space shuttle era where there was a slew of space shuttles and we would just refurbish them. I don't know what the time period is between landing and getting it ready for launch again, but for SpaceX, it took them less than a year to be able to get it back to normal and be able to launch again. Because back in the Apollo missions, we would send a Saturn V up and that's it. You know, millions of dollars just gone. You have to make a new one. So it's definitely good for our environment, I guess. And yeah, it's a really big thing. That and Artemis is getting ready to launch in November, which is the new Apollo. And so they've been doing so many tests on the rocket, and it's actually being stacked right now at Kennedy, where they like assemble it. And
is that where you are?
No, that's in Florida.
Oh, okay.
I'm at Johnson. Yeah.
Okay.
Kennedy is where they launch everything, and Houston's where we have mission control. But yeah, that one's a really big one. It's like going back to the moon is going to be huge, but it's not crewed. So.
Wow. Yeah. Why don't you remind listeners what your role is at NASA?
Okay, so I'm a systems analyst, systems engineer, training systems operator. There's so many names, but I run simulations all day. So whether it be for astronauts, for flight controllers that sit in mission control, launch, landings, EVAs, which are spacewalks, all of it. We run simulations. Yeah.
So describe your walk into work. Like what's the building like, and what do the walls look like? What the machinery, what do you see when you walk into work?
Okay. Well, first we have to pass security. You have to like flash your badge. And fun fact, they can search your car at any point. Which is
really?
Yeah. I had a friend when he was leaving once, they can just take your car for 45 minutes. Anyway, wow. So you drive in, the site is huge, take a few turns, few stoplights, get to building 5, no windows. It's just completely brick, stone, I'm not sure. Huge building, walk in, you have to badge in a couple times, like at each door. And and then it says Space Station Training Facility, NASA, in huge letters. You walk into a high bay, which, if you don't know what a high bay is, it's just like this huge room. And they used to have Skylab in there, like the simulator. I don't know if you're familiar with Skylab.
I'm not.
Okay, sorry. Am I just like
What is Skylab, real quick?
Skylab was the first station. So back
Okay.
in the 70s, we flew Skylab up, and it was like a working lab in orbit before
Wow.
space station. So we used to have the Skylab simulator in there, and it was like 3-4 stories high, but it's empty now.
Wow.
So you just walk through the high bay. There's a big picture of the ISS, and it's very industrial looking. It's exactly what you think it looks like. It's just like it's an engineer's building,
Yeah.
like not very pretty. But on the walls, they have every space shuttle mission, which was hundreds, in chronological order. They have the badge and then a picture of the crew and the date all along the walls. And then I open the door to the office and sit on console. So
Wow. So are there any like inspirational quotes on the walls or anything?
Honestly, yes. So on the other side of the building, on like another entrance, they have, for our 2 shuttle accidents, Challenger and Columbia, they have a quote and like a memorandum, I guess, for the crew, and it's like, it says something really nice. They have that, and then in my room they have like past, present, future, like past the moon, present space station, the future Mars, and stuff like that. So
That's cool.
super nerdy. Yeah.
It's about what I would expect.
Yeah.
So then have you ever been, do you get to like, I mean, not wander around, obviously, because all the badges and stuff. Have you ever gone into a room and just felt overwhelmed?
Yes. So I would say the first time I felt that was in my interview, and they brought me into mission control, like not like on the ground, but in the building that houses mission control.
Okay.
You walk the halls, and instead of like the space shuttle, they have pictures of like people sitting in mission control from the 60s. And like I knew all of their names. I was like, oh my God, like that's Gene Kranz, who like got Apollo 13 home, and just like these famous pictures just lining the walls. I just like walking the halls, it's just crazy to me to be like, yeah, Neil Armstrong walked these halls, like
Yeah.
that's enough for me. But yeah.
Wow. So then, so you go into the control room, right? And
Mhm.
how important in your role at NASA is like critical thinking skills and problem solving skills to do your job?
Um, I would say it's pretty up there with like what skills you need. I would say also problem solving and the ability to be succinct in your talking to other people while you're problem solving. If that makes sense?
So you have to have like, so while you're trying to solve problems, you also have to have the communication skills with
Yes.
other people to communicate solving these problems.
Yes. So sometimes something will go wrong on a major sim, and people in Germany are a part of the sim, and depending on how big the problem is and depending who you're working with, your coworkers will come up right next to you and we'll all just be talking. Or sometimes some people, are very independent, and you'll be by yourself working the problem. And so that's where like communication comes into play, where you have to be an expert in what you're doing. Because if you are alone, you have to be able to go through your mental toolbox of like, okay, if this happens, this happens. Is there crew? What's the least invasive way to fix this problem without taking too much of their time? How much time left do they have in the sim? All of these things. And then on the other hand, you have people in the room next to you who will come in and get a little upset and say, okay, why is this happening? Why aren't you figuring it out? And why isn't it being done faster? And you're like,
Wow.
okay. And you have to be kind enough to stay calm, but also stern enough to be able to speak your mind and say, okay, this is X, Y, and Z, and this is what I'm doing, and this is the ETA, all of that stuff. So there's a lot of working parts.
Wow. Do you have any recent examples you can share?
Uh, I was trying to think of this, and while I was just talking right now, and I was like, this happens like every day. I would say, okay, so a couple weeks ago we had a crew training, and we have a schedule to go by of like, here's who's training, here's how the configuration or what configuration they want, and this is the room that they're going to be in. And the schedule was saying something and the instructor was wanting something different, and the schedulers and the instructor didn't align correctly.
Okay.
And so we were hearing it from the instructor of like, we want this, and we're saying we already configured it to look like this and they don't align. And the instructor's like, my crew is already here and like I need this fixed. And it's like, this is impossible to fix in 5 minutes. Like,
Wow.
you know, and so it's like, okay, what can we do to fix this in 5 minutes without getting the instructor mad? But we also need to tell the scheduler that this is what it was a whole mess. And we ended up doing it, but it was just like, this was not our fault. Like, so yeah, I guess that's just one of.
So this
small.
is like every day that you have to like do this on the fly.
Yes, and everyone is different. So it's like you can run into someone that's going to be super chill and be like, yeah, take your time. And someone who's like gets irrational, you know, and you
Okay.
you just have to deal with it. So
then do you try to like think of the personalities that are all involved and like individually try to adjust it that way?
for sure.
Yeah.
It's to the point, you know, at first, when I first started working here, I'd have a problem and my coworker would be like, okay, who's running it? Or who's the person that's like getting the data in the sim? And I'm like, oh, it's this person. They're like, oh no. Like like, or like, oh, they're, you know, it's fine, just like let them know. It's to the point now where like the person will walk into the building and I see them in the hallway and I'm like, I'm not taking that session. Like they are, you know, and sometimes you're left with it and you're just like, all right, it's gonna be a rough day, but it's
Wow.
okay.
That's interesting. So this sounds intense. It sounds like your days are really intense. How do you find balance between your work life and your personal life?
They always say like, leave it at work. I'm not that person. I will come home and just like complain. No, not really, but I can take it home too much sometimes. And I am that type of person where if someone at work is like texting me or, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? And I'm already off work, I will do it. And I've realized I'm like, this isn't how, you know, some people aren't so obsessed, if that's, you know,
Yeah.
fair to say. And so I've been trying to cut back of like, once I clock out, I clock out. Like no more work. And so I guess, you know, I've been setting boundaries and I feel like that's hard for everybody, but especially with work for me, because I love what I do, it's harder. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, I can imagine too, because I mean, you're really into your job and you're really into NASA and the mission that it both stands for and what you strive to reach in your own life and curiosity. So you want to be as helpful as possible.
For sure.
But then for you to do your job, you have to be operating at your highest level. And if you're not
Yes.
getting enough rest or balance in your life, then you can't give that, right?
For sure. And you said it so much nicer than I did. I've gotten texts at 3, 4 in the morning, and the shift I'm on is I have to be at work by 5:45 in the morning. And so I'm sleep, like I am out at that point. And I'll wake up at 5 to these texts and I'm like, oh no, like I feel responsible, and some people don't feel that. And I guess that's just work-life balance, figuring out like,
Yeah, you're figuring it out.
this is not your problem, type. So
What's the last time we talked, you had like afternoons available, and then what does your circadian rhythm, what is that like?
oh man. Yeah. So I was on night shift in September. October, I went to seconds or swings, which is like 2 to 10. And then I went to first shift, which is 5:45 to 2. And when you're hopping every month, it's like, it's crazy. And you just have to get used to it. Like by the time you get used to it, they're like, and you're going to this shift. And you're like, oh my God. But since November, I've been on first shift and I've asked, I'm like, just keep me on first shift. Like I will go to bed at 8 p.m. I don't care. Just keep me on one shift. And so I've gotten used to it. But I have to go to bed. I have to go to bed by 9. Like in bed at 9. Otherwise, I combust.
So what does that look like? If it's still like bright outside, how do you?
I have blackout curtains.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you do before bed? Do you read at all or journal or do anything?
Yeah, I read. I drink tea, hot tea.
Okay. What kind of tea?
That's about it. Usually like chamomile or like something fruity, but something sweet and hot and knocks me out.
So will they keep you on first shift or no? They'll be like, thanks for the tip, Kat, but we're gonna move you around.
Could you imagine? Usually, they're pretty good about keeping you on a shift that you like, and if you're being productive enough and helpful and you're churning out good evaluations from these sims, then it's fine. If you're a little more not so productive, then they'll be like, put them on another shift.
Yeah.
See what happens. So hopefully I've been doing well.
So I imagine this is a large part of your job and your role, but what do you love about numbers and math?
Oh no.
My camera sometimes does that. I don't need.
Okay. Okay. I thought
for the listeners on the podcast, I have a DSLR setup and with a Canon TI5, I hook it up to my computer, and like every 20 minutes, the lens just shuts off and turns back on. So that's typically what it is.
Okay.
I don't know.
Good to know.
There'll be like another one too, probably. So
okay. Good to know.
But getting back to numbers and math.
Numbers, yeah. So
that's problem solving, right? The lens.
Yeah.
That's not my forte necessarily.
Okay. So numbers, I love that math, there is always an answer. Like even if there's multiple answers, or even if the answer is like it's undefined, like there's always an answer and there's always a different way to solve it, which is fascinating to me. To be able to ask like 5 different people, hey, solve this problem. Or hey, how do you the big one that's always on my mind is how people tip on their restaurant like receipt.
Oh,
I
I can
always,
tell you a lot about that. I bartend
yeah.
on the weekends.
Oh, no way. Okay, cool. It's like how do you get to that number? Like not just you throwing a number out, but like how do you take a percentage? You know, that fascinates me. Every time I go to the restaurant, I'm like, how do you do this? How do you do this? Because I do it in a way where I'm just like, that's so different. Or like every person will give you a different answer. And that's so cool to me.
How do
But
you tip?
I usually move the decimal point one to the left. So if it's like $50, be like, okay, $5 times two, that'd be 10, which is 20%. And then I add off of that.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And some people are like, well, I divide by 5 or whatever, 1/5 is 20%. Yeah.
Yeah, I get yeah, so there's that way. I think that's pretty standard way. But that's a nice flat number, 50. So say you have like 2691.
That's true.
People like just zeros or fives, like numbers. Just so they'll just want to
Clean.
get to that 30 or that 35. And then it's like 307 or like
Yes.
807.
See, I was never that person. I have a couple girlfriends who would be like, they just want to make it to the whole number. And I'm like, ugh, like that's so like, it's an ugly number that you're dealing with. Like, just take the 20%. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And then some people are very like rigid. It's like 20% or 15% or whatever. And then it's interesting. Service industry, people that work service industry just tip ridiculously well. So then it's like, oh, it's $20. All right, here's another 15 or another 20 or whatever.
Which is great. Yeah.
The other day, I got a $100 tip on a $143 tab. It was good.
Well, that was nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really
He's a
nice.
regular. So, and it's interesting too, like, cause tipping, I mean, we're going in this whole other direction here, but tipping, it's really interesting. Because it teaches you about generosity and teaches you about people, and what people don't realize is that generosity goes a long way. So
100%.
It's pretty obvious, but
Yeah.
So if it's busy and I know someone tips really well, guess who is always going to get the greatest service, right?
Yep.
And it's, yeah, that's a whole nother thing. But yeah,
It is.
tipping is important.
It's super important. And I try, at least I started this thing a couple months ago where, I feel like this is going to sound so cheesy. I'm like, if you feel like you have an abundance of not things or just like abundance of love, of friendship, of like not tangible things, like you need to like also give that to other people. And so if that made any sense, but I would start tipping like crazy amounts, and just like every once in a while when I could, is just like just to do it and then leave and not even see the person's reaction, and just and it just, you don't do it to make yourself feel good. You do it so that you can just give to other people too. I think it's important.
I think the biggest thing on parlaying off of that note, it's like people are coming from either like a scarcity mindset or an abundance mindset. And so if people are like limiting what they're giving because they're trying to like be protective of like what what their bank account is, or like, oh, I only do this, or there's like all these other intangible things where if you just give more, it will always come back to you in some type of way.
Yes.
Whether it's service, whether it's a greeting, a conversation, it just leads into so many other things that are a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
And then it makes someone feel better, which means they're going to just be elevated as a person and be doing better for other people.
And
And
it's
it goes outside of tipping itself, but in the world as well.
yes, it's infectious. And I know this week, we're on site one week and then off one week where we telework. And this was my teleworking week. And so sometimes on my teleworking week, I can just slip into like, I'm just gonna sit on my couch and work. And sometimes it's not the greatest. You know, you get into that like lazy, I'm not gonna work out, I'm gonna order takeout, like just like
Yeah.
all week, and it's not, you know, the greatest. But I was kind of in a slump this week, and yesterday I was like, I'm just gonna go out of my way to like compliment people, not like fake compliments, but
Yeah.
compliment people if I see someone with a sign on the side of the road that's like, I need help, you know, I'm just gonna go the extra mile. And it was amazing. It like
Yeah.
got me out of my slump. Yeah, it was. So it's just like a testament to be like, if you are greeting people, if you're giving out happiness, like it comes back.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, thanks.
So in the news recently, Virgin Galactic like went to outer space, right? And like Richard Branson's like the oldest person to ever go to space or something.
I think yes. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? And then as a follow-up,
Mhm.
do you believe in your lifetime you will go into space?
Okay, I have a question about the second question, but
Okay.
I'll answer the first one first. Okay, I have a couple of hot takes on this.
All right. All right.
Okay, so I was waiting to see how NASA astronauts reacted because
Okay.
I was like, maybe I don't have the warrant to feel this way because I'm not an astronaut. But I was like, well, let me see. And most of them that I saw, or any of them that I saw, they were all very happy about it. And I was like, maybe I should cool down.
Okay.
um, but you know, I'm I think it's pretty awesome. That there's non-government entities that are doing it. I think that's fabulous. But I also feel I can hold space for both. I almost feel like they skipped a line,
Yeah.
you know? And that's it hasn't been able to leave me. And I guess it's my classic thought of what an astronaut should be. I feel like it's very important that we should be sending real people to space and like civilians, but I feel like it happened so fast, you know, within the
Mhm.
past year, it just rocketed off. And that's a word. But yeah, I think it's awesome, but I also feel like there's a respect that needs to be given to I don't know, to space flight, I guess.
Yeah. It's a, what is it, like a precarious situation? Is that, I don't know if
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
it's like we now are entering a phase where we have the ability to send tourists to space.
Yes.
And the reason we're in this position is because of all the hard work and dedication that's come before.
It's you know what it is? It triggered my mind. I just recently rewatched Jurassic Park. And
That's a great way to spend your time.
yeah. Um, it's Ian Malcolm saying, "You stood on the shoulders." I'm gonna butcher this so bad. He's like, "You stood on the shoulders of people who had done all the work for you, and now you're packaging it, you're patenting
Yeah.
it, and all that stuff." That's how I feel. It's hot take. Everyone's kind of
I don't
excited.
know if it's, I mean, maybe it's hot, but it's very understandable. I mean, you
Okay.
interact with these people on a daily basis. You see what goes on and just the training, the effort and
Yes.
everything involved. And then yeah.
it feels like, um, I wouldn't say a slap on the face. I would just say like they're uh, like what? Like it's hard, like that. That's how
Yeah.
I see it, and it's a little. They're probably not meaning it like that, but I'm like there are thousands of people on the ground making sure that the astronauts right now are safe, and it's not just for fun.
Yeah.
It's so
So
there's
how do we communicate to the general public kind of this idea about that it's not just like this instant, oh, now we go to space now, and this, the dedication that took
yeah.
place before.
I'm not sure. That's a really good question because NASA has had a lot of setbacks. Like, I think it's we're a government agency, but also the three accidents that we've had, Apollo 1, Challenger, and Columbia, to bring them back up. It really showed the public how dangerous it is, and I
Hmm.
feel like the last accident we had was in 2003, and people who were born after that, it's like, and I'm not saying God forbid there's another accident, that I don't think we need an accident to show the importance of safety. um I don't know where I'm going with this, but I don't know if that made any sense. There's nothing at stake really, if you know
Yeah.
um and you can't really quantify that until, oh god, this got dark, I'm sorry. I apologize. I don't
Yeah.
know,
Well, what you're
I'm not
saying is
sure.
like it's unfortunate that tragedy has to remind people of the importance of diligence and safety.
Yes.
Um, and because of that diligence and safety, we haven't had a tragedy in a long while. And you
Yes.
don't want it to happen again by just like taking it for granted and
Yes.
not considering all the seriousness about it.
Yes. And I mean, a poster that's in, at least it's in our building. I know it's in mission control as well, but um it's the foundations of flight operations, and I think there's 7 foundations, and it's like tough competence or toughness competence, and they're everywhere, and it just says like we need to know that at any point, like in another Apollo 13 could happen, and we need to be ready for it. And I think because of these tragedies, it's like NASA has just been like, okay, well, we can't spare any time. We need to do it right the first time. And that's really ingrained in all of the employees. And not saying that Virgin Galactic or SpaceX doesn't have that, but it's definitely taught us how to do things in such a diligent manner.
Yeah. What do you think about what is it? There's like Blue Origin and there's another one too. Amazon, Bezos is getting involved now.
Yes, Bezos is doing Blue Origin, which
Okay.
he's flying on July 20th, which is the 52nd anniversary of the moon landing. And
Okay.
that's just sacrilegious to me. I'm like, you could have picked any other day. Um, but it's the same story. I'm like, okay, well, you do what you got to do.
So what's the difference? Okay, so there's SpaceX, Blue Origin. There's like another one too, right? Like Jet something.
I'm not sure. There's about like 11, I think, 11 or 12, like
Okay. Just
private
privately.
organizations.
Okay. Oh.
I don't know all the names. I'm sorry.
So what it sounds like is currently, right now, you would not go to space based on principle.
Yeah, I would have to apply to be a NASA astronaut and go that route.
Okay. Okay. Technology is going to change quite a bit in our lifetimes, though, Kat.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I mean, when I was teaching, I would read like the BuzzFeed 30 things that you wouldn't know, or if you weren't born in the 90s, and I would like tell my kids who were born in like 2004 like these things, and they're like, you had to wait to like get off the phone to use the internet. Like, oh man, like it's wild.
Wow. What year were you born? Like
90,
97?
96.
96?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're right at that cusp.
I know. Sorry.
You're
Yeah.
right there of straddling. It's interesting, like generations like millennials and Gen Z, how millennials are the last generation to straddle the like analog and digital, and Gen
Yes.
Z is the first that's like mainly digital,
Fully.
digital. Yeah. So it's going to be really interesting. Not to go like too far into this idea, but I'm really into this book Generations by Neil Howe and William Strauss. Have you read it
I
or aware of it?
haven't. No.
So they look at American history through the lens of generational theory and psychology. And they look at these historical cycles in American history. They go all the way back from like 1584 and they predict to like 2069. All right.
There's a book called The Fourth Turning. Have you heard of that? It sounds like that.
Let me see.
Yes, that one.
So I'm holding it up right now. We got The Fourth Turning. So I did a video on YouTube about generations, and it's my most popular video. I just talk about this concept. And so there's these historical cycles that occur like every 80 to 90 years in American history and society.
Yes.
And they identify these like 4 generational personality types. And so there's 2 dominant types, which is the idealist and the civic type. And what happens during an idealist rise in adulthood, ages 20 to 44, is a spiritual awakening in the country. And so that's like the transcendentalists in the 19th century, baby boomers in the 1960s. And because they're such a big cohort of a generation, typically, they instill a lot of their ideas into the world and society. And there's the reactive type, which, because the idealist gets so much attention and it's kind of like they dominate, everybody's hands off when raising the reactive type. So they're very creative and independent. But it's usually they have disastrous results time and time again in American history. This is like the lost generation. This is Gen X. But Gen X, though, because of this, they're entrepreneurs and they're into technology, and they got the internet to like where it is today. The civic type is another dominant force. And what they do, so they experience their rise in adulthood during a secular crisis in the country. So they're the ones that have to really like come together, collaborate, problem solve, and figure out the infrastructure for the country moving forward. And this is the revolutionary generation, like the founding fathers, the GI generation fighting World War II and setting up the second half of the 20th century. And millennials are the civic type. So when they're young, there's like optimistic, society sees where they went wrong with the reactive type. So they pour a lot more resources into the civic type. So they're more educated, they're more collaborative, they're more optimistic. And so then they have to figure this out. And then the generation after the civic type is the adaptive type. And what they're known for is being the managers and administrators of the country. So they basically just execute the ideas and vision of the civic type, and they just get stuff done.
And that's going to be Gen Z.
Yeah. So
I mean, that's pretty spot on.
So the prologue, the preface, this is written in 1991. No one, for example, can foretell the specific emergency that will confront America during what we will call the crisis of 2020. The nation's public life will undergo a swift and possibly revolutionary transformation.
Oh my God.
So what I think the secular crisis is the digital revolution. It's disrupted everything. And then because of the digital revolution, we're experiencing all these other crises that are kind of emerging and we're becoming more aware of.
For sure.
So what I believe the civic type, the millennials need to do is figure out what the infrastructure looks like in the country moving forward in this like digital world. How do we build our communities? How do we get along with each other? How do we get things done? And still have belief in a lot of our ideals and shared experiences. So that will kind of be the role.
Yeah, that's a great insight. Wow.
So the fourth turning, I was in the comment section of my videos, they told me to read this one too. So I got to read this one and do a video on this one too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it's kind of in the same, I haven't read it yet, but I've heard about it. And that it's like mind blowing. But yeah, it's wild. The digital, how far we've come is just, I mean, so cliche, but it's just so far. It's so wild to me. And sometimes just on a day-to-day basis, I'm just like, I can't believe like I could do this on my phone or, you know, in my car.
Nothing's a surprise to us anymore. It's like our lifetimes, we're just going to experience like one technology revolution after the other.
Yeah. I remember I had to teach kids how to tell time on the second hand. I was like, I'm only going to teach this once. I was like, you can't tell time because they're so used to seeing it on their phone. That's crazy to me. That's just crazy.
Yeah, this more and more like now I'm entering like a new life phase, and it's like becoming more and more aware of like how much the world has changed and like how I'm not young anymore, and like yeah, it's weird. Kids these days.
Yeah. I just turned 25 like 2 weeks ago, and I had a major like quarter life crisis. I was like, oh my God, but whatever, it's fine.
Yeah. So that's something that's on my mind quite a bit. And I'm looking to speak at colleges and universities. I wrote kind of a speech outlining kind of a lot of these principles and like to execute what we should do. Like future is not mysterious. It happens over and over again in history. So all we have to do is just execute what happened previously and just get the job done. But there's like one time in American history where it skipped. Skipped.
I think, no, I mean, I'm not going to guess because I'm probably going to be wrong, but I've heard of this. What was it?
So what should have happened? Okay, so the Civil War. What should have happened? So like Lincoln is the idealist type. So his generation really brought forth the ideas of abolition and the idea of slavery in America and confronting it. What should have happened, which it started to happen, and that's okay. We have to create the infrastructure now for the Union moving forward with now emancipated individuals and transition them into a productive society. And so there were a number of legislators, like I think there was like over 700 Black individuals who were in public office. There were like 2 senators and like, so this stuff was happening, but then like Lincoln got assassinated and everybody's just like, I don't know
about all of that.
And then I think you see the like Jim Crow and antebellum and just like Reconstruction. We really botched Reconstruction. And because what would have happened is that a civic type generation would come together and then kind of implement the structure moving forward. But because we were in a civil war and so fragmented and, you know, against each other, it's hard to come together to get things done. Right.
Right. Which is exactly what we're seeing. I mean, not as hardcore, obviously, but you know, the country that we're in now, it's like, okay, we all just can we do it? Like, come on now. But I guess it's going to take a few more years to get everyone just like on the same page, and that would be Gen Z, right? Or are we talking about our generation?
So I think now we're starting to settle a little bit in the 21st century, like all these technological revolutions, the digital revolution. I'm like simplifying a lot of this stuff, but like we're kind of figuring out, okay, the internet, okay, we see where it's going. Oh, we see these psychological effects of our screens and smartphones. Oh, we see how much it's polarizing us, and it's driven all by advertising. And okay, we have to now kind of navigate that. And what I try to push, and for those listening, is that the biggest way to create change is not through political party, race, religion, economic class. It's generation, because especially as millennials, we have these shared experiences of going from an analog world to a digital world. And we understand it best of like how to create the infrastructure moving forward. At least we have better ideas than people who have not participated in it. So we kind of have to be the leaders for Gen Z and have that vision of how to do it.
It's a great way to put it. Yeah, I totally agree.
All right, so we went off on a little tangent there.
It's okay. It was fascinating. Are you kidding me? That was cool.
I'm really interested in biotechnology right now. I think that's going to drive the 21st century.
Yeah. I need to look more into it, but I hear what you're saying. That's another conversation.
Well, I think what's so challenging for people is that this stuff is like mind-blowing and intense. So it's very
heavy.
It's very scary often to think about this stuff, because it's so much change, and it's so intense, and it's so disruptive. So then we kind of just ignore it. But then if we ignore it, then that's not good either.
Yes, then it can go into the wrong hands, and it can be exploited, and like I see the negative connotations of it if we're not paying attention to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We
have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work, and I think a lot of it we gotta all be a little bit more open-minded and willing to listen and share perspectives with other people.
100%. Even when you don't agree with people.
Exactly.
That's when it needs to be happening. The open-mindedness. But yeah, maybe sooner than later.
Going to a little bit lighter of a subject.
Go for it.
You went to Dinosaur Valley State Park recently.
Yes, I did.
have like a list of fossil sites that I wanna check out in my lifetime, and that's one of them. What was it like there?
It was really cool. We weren't gonna we were planning on camping, but July in Texas is like no joke. So we ended up getting an Airbnb outside of the park, and we actually hit like an 80-degree weather day, which was great. Oh, the webcam. Okay. So we went in.
And so this is it, like outside Fort Worth, Dallas area, right?
Yeah, about like an hour and a half outside of Dallas-ish. And you get the map, and the map has all of the sites where there's tracks. We didn't hit all of them, but some of the tracks are underwater, which I wasn't expecting. I didn't really do a lot of research on it before I went, and I should have, but we didn't like bring bathing suits. So you can see them from like the Outer Banks, because it's like shallow water. But it's really cool. There's this place called the Ballroom where they have all sorts of tracks, and they look like they're dancing, like because they're going in all sorts of different directions. That's why they call it the Ballroom. But we saw Acrocanthosaurus, as well as Sauroposeidon tracks, which Sauroposeidon tracks looks like elephant tracks, like, because it's a big brachiosaur type. And then the Acrocanthosaur is like a smaller, like an Allosaurus type.
Okay.
But yeah,
Allosaurus, that's a good looking dinosaur. You ever think about that?
Yeah, it's like the Jurassic Park raptors.
Yeah.
That's how I see them. But yeah, they're cool. I think they're like the scariest one, even besides T-Rex, because they're faster. Anyway, Dinosaur Valley was really cool. We hiked like 3.5 miles. It's very hilly, but it was gorgeous and definitely worth it. It was really cool.
So then if the tracks are underwater, the footprints, are they like eroding then?
That's something that I was like, my brain was kind of breaking, because I was like, how there's so many factors for this to even be here in the first place. I'm like, this is like 100 million years ago, and for it to have stayed, and then for water to come in and for it to still be there, I'm like, they must, like, what do they spray on it? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's wild to me. But yeah, they're very deep. Like, they're a couple inches deep. It's crazy.
Wow.
But yeah, it was great. And they have some figurines out in the front. They have a Apatosaur and a T-Rex, and they were from the 1960s New York State Fair. So they were so weird.
They look weird.
But I love them. I'm like, these aren't even close, but it's fine. They're charming.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. Just the knowledge accumulated even over like a century of dinosaurs.
Yes.
We had Tim James. He's a paleontologist. He's come on the show a couple times, and it's really interesting how expansive the field is becoming, because so many people are interested in dinosaurs that you just have more people participating in the field,
Have you read The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs?
I have it right here.
Yes.
I have not read it yet.
Oh, it's delicious.
Is it?
I'm in the middle of it, and there's a fact within the first 10 pages, it's like, I'm gonna get this wrong. It was like, for a while in the 2000s, we were discovering a new dinosaur species once a week. And I was like, how is that even possible? It's crazy. It's an easy read. It's funny, and it's a lot, very informative.
Okay. Have you read The Dinosaur Artist?
I have not.
That one's a good one. That one follows the story of this books. I don't have the book cover on this one.
Okay.
Let's see. I'll do that with my bookshelf. I organize them by colors. Sometimes without the cover, it looks better. Gotcha. And that's basically about it follows the story of this tyrannosaur species going up for auction like in New York, and then one of the ladies that was like working on it or something, she's from Mongolia, and she recognized that dinosaur is only found in Mongolia in the Gobi Desert, so that it's technically illegal to bring it out of Mongolia. So then it's like turned into this whole thing, and then it follows the fossil hunter and the finder, and it goes through his story. And the United States is the only place in the world, the only country in the world where whoever's land it's found on owns the fossil.
Yes. There's a documentary about Sue, actually. Have you seen it? Called Dinosaur 13. I saw it on Hulu a couple months ago, and it was so sad, because I'm sure you know the story of Sue, where it's like they found them in the Badlands, and then they took it to this like this company that found it, and then the person who handed it over, that the person of the ranch they found Sue on, like did a handshake versus like, signing it off, and he came back and it like brought the FBI out and was like, that's actually my fossil. Oh, it's so sad to watch. And it just, they did jail time for like a dinosaur. It's
The
crazy.
story of Sue is pretty wild.
Mhm.
I joke that Sue is my girlfriend, and so when I go to the Field Museum, I always go over there. That was so, yeah. Sue's fossil went up for auction, and this was in the 90s, and the Field Museum wanted this big attraction, and so in the auction, it was the American Museum of Natural History, Field Museum, and then this real estate guy in Florida, and he was going to put it in his foyer.
That's right. Oh my God. It's like the Indiana Jones. I'm like, that belongs in a museum. Like, how could you do this? Like, but
yeah, so it sold for 7.6 million, 8.3 with Sotheby's fees, and that alerted everybody that fossils are valuable now. And so then, ever since then, you've seen an increase of, looking for dinosaur fossils and stuff.
For sure. Yeah, I think it's kind of trendy right now, which is kind of cool. Science. All right.
I'm down with that trend.
Yeah, me too.
What do you think about this? Okay. Climate change. It's exposing land that hasn't been seen before because there's no ice. And so we're going to find more and more dinosaurs, aren't we?
Or like receding water.
Yeah.
Like, I never thought about it like that. Maybe. Yeah.
You look terrified.
I'm like, I mean, I guess that's, I don't want to say silver lining, but it's so bad. But I never thought about it that way, especially because of that thing in the book I just said, where it's like a dinosaur a week, a new species, not even like a new, like, oh, this is a cousin of, this is a, it's like new species. I'm like, I mean, they roam the earth for however long.
Yeah.
There has to be a million different types, I guess.
Yeah. It's wild. Are there any other fossil sites or science sites you want to visit? Do you have like a bucket list at all?
I kind of, not so much fossil sites. I would love to go to the Badlands. But I don't know how much. I'd like to do like an amateur dig. I'm like not a paleontologist, but I would love to go on, a touristy type thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to join James or Tim on one.
Oh, cool. Oh, that would be cool.
That would be.
It's so cool. It's so cool. I would also, a couple years ago, I was very invested in Chernobyl, which I would never go. But it's scientifically, like, I read this book called Midnight in Chernobyl, and it just goes through everything that went wrong. And it's, I don't want to use the word fascinating because that's kind of like, but it was wild to me. And I was just so enthralled in how could they do this. And it's the 80s, it's like that I think it was the late 80s when it happened. And I would love to go as an archaeological, like the archaeological side of it, but I can't, how could you risk that, so I guess that's an Antarctica. I'd love to go to Antarctica.
Yeah,
that's about it.
What's it cost? I heard it's like costs like $7,000 or 17,000 to go there.
Sorry, that's my laptop. For Antarctica, yeah. So I've seen like Atlas Obscura do like cruises, and it's like for 14 days, it's like 8,000, and like all expense paid, 8,000. And I'm like, that's. But
I love that you mentioned Atlas Obscura. I feel like I'm the only person I know that.
Really? Okay, cool. Well, here I am. since the pandemic hit, it's been like, I don't look at their website that much, but I'm starting to do it again. And I'm just like, it would be so cool. Their trips are awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, why don't I got one last question for you. We'll end on.
Go.
What's something you're curious about recently?
I would say airplanes.
In what capacity?
I'm reading a book right now called is it here? Yeah, Airframe by Michael Crichton. I'm a huge Michael Crichton fan.
Okay.
And
Author of Jurassic Park. Yeah.
Author of Jurassic Park, Andromeda Strain, Timeline. And someone likened it to the Andromeda Strain on the sleeve of the book. So I picked it up because I was like, cool, science fiction, airplanes, this will be great. I'm reading it and there's like no science fiction. It's just like a story. And I'm like, okay, I guess. But Michael Crichton does such a good job of being as accurate as possible when describing aspects of science. He's wicked smart. And he described, well, one of the characters in the book described how airplanes fly. And I sat there and I was like, I have never thought about this. I think about rockets flying and that makes sense to me. But for some reason, I've never thought about airplanes and how they fly. It's, it's basically the same thing, but airplanes just kind of freak me out a little bit more than rockets do, of just the aerodynamics and the physics that has to happen for them to get off the ground is it's so simple, but it's been very curious to me, I guess.
Isn't it so remarkable?
Yes. Here we are, technology again. And to think, back in the 1910s when they first started flying and then it became commercial, I'm like, people had so much trust, the space, it's remarkable is a great word. It's great. But
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on today. This has been a pleasure. Oh, just nerding out on so many different technology.
It was great. I'm sorry if I was going
you're
really
good.
fast.
You're good. For those listening and watching, you can follow Kat on Twitter. It's Ticatosaur. What are the numbers?
2112, like Rush.
Oh, okay. Ticatosaur 2112. Great follow. And thanks again for being on. This has been great.
You're welcome.